This week is a bit of an emotional roller coaster. We'll be remembering Jennifer Finch of L7 after her passing, talking about the unnecessary backlash surrounding Poppy, taking a look at an incredible new Woman in Metal exhibit at the Rock Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, and I'll finally share some realistic dates, ticket prices, and expectations for attendance for what Valkyrie Fest could actually become. Plus, I'll also review Eva Under Fire's Villainous and introduce this week's Band of the Week. Let's get into it. Hello, all of my beautiful people. I'm Aaron Jackson here once again with Valkyrie Sessions. Hope everyone's had a wonderful week out there and is doing well in the world. A lot of things going on this week regarding rock and metal. A lot of fun things to talk about. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. We're already here at episode number 4. I just huge thank you to the community that has supported this so far. Whether you're listening and tuning in on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, obviously anybody who's following out there on Instagram. If anybody who's tuning into this podcast has not followed the Instagram yet, go check out at Valkyrie Fest on Instagram. Have a lot of fun things will be coming up there soon. Going to have a lot more posts, kind of engaging posts on there. We're going to do some blind rankings of some clean rock and metal singers over this next week or so. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into everything going on right now for this past week and some things I want to talk about. Number one, and I got to start by saying this is definitely, a sad start to the show. Not something I ever want to talk about, but unfortunately it is the case. I have to talk about the passing of Jennifer Finch of L7. So here is an article in Billboard that talks about it. Jennifer Finch, the bassist, vocalist, and songwriter whose ferocious presence helped power L7 through the 90s alternative rock boom, has died. She was 59 years old. Finch died following an aggressive form of brain cancer, according to a statement announcing her death. L7 paid tribute to Finch in a statement writing, quote, "We are shattered by the loss of our beloved bandmate, sister, and friend Jennifer Finch, whose fierce spirit, humor, and boundless creativity helped shape L7 and changed all of our lives forever." Quote, "Jennifer was a true original who lived entirely on her own terms, and the impact she made on music, art, and everyone lucky enough to know her cannot be measured," the band continued. "We love her beyond words and will carry her with us always. Rest in power, our dear friend." The statement was signed, "With love, L7." Finch's death comes shortly after L7 shared that she had been diagnosed with an aggressive form of brain cancer and would be unable to join the band's upcoming farewell tour. The band said at that time that she required extensive medical care, rehabilitation, and professional in-home support following multiple surgeries and serious complications. Finch was a core member of L7's classic lineup, anchoring the band's guitar-heavy attack with a bass style that was blunt, melodic, and built for maximum impact. Alongside Donita Sparks, Susie Gardner, and Dee Plakas, she helped define L7's place at the intersection of punk, metal, grunge, and alternative rock, where the band's distortion-heavy songs carried sharp humor and political bite. Formed in Los Angeles in 1985, L7 broke through the alternative boom of the early 90s, becoming known for songs including Pretend We're Dead, Shove, Andres, and Fuel My Fire. Their 1992 album, Bricks Are Heavy, produced by Butch Vig, became a cornerstone release for the band, pairing sludgy riffs and shout-along hooks with a restless, anti-gloss spirit. So obviously, this is extremely sad, as I mentioned, and tragic, and my thoughts are out to her family, friends, and fans. It's crazy because as I was editing episode 3 and kind of getting things ready to go up this past week, it was like 5 days ago, I saw the news that that was announced that she had brain cancer, and then a GoFundMe was set up and started, and that GoFundMe hit its goal in like 48 hours. So if there's anything to take away, on the positive side out of this, as heartbreaking as this is, the one thing that I love seeing was just how quickly the rock and metal community came together to support her. That's something that this community should always be proud of. But obviously tragic and always sad to see, a great artist pass away. So thoughts out to, her family, friends, and fans, most importantly. So never want to start a show with that, but had to at least bring that up. I was actually going to save this for later in the show, but I feel like I want to get all the negative stuff out of the way. I'm not necessarily going to do this every week, but I do want to do a little history and rock metal segment. if the week calls for it and there's some big events or things that happened with rock and metal in the past, or obviously with women in the rock and metal scene, I will talk about it. And this week it's big because of the passing of three icons in music. In 2017, actually the day I'm recording this, July 20th, this is the 9 years since the passing of Chester Bennington of Linkin Park, one of the most unique, recognizable voices of the 21st century in rock and metal. On July 22nd, last year is actually 1 year since the passing of the legend himself, Ozzy Osbourne. And then on the 23rd, later this week in 2011, was the passing of Amy Winehouse. Incredible voice, one of the better low female voices I've ever heard. So I know kind of some negative things to get the show started here, but obviously, it has to be mentioned, talked about, and we have to remember these icons for the contributions that they have made to the genre and to the community. So wanted to get that out of the way before we get into some of the good things and the positive things going on with rock and metal. Do have to still talk about something that kind of came up this past week. This isn't necessarily super negative. I think it's actually more of just an interesting discussion. And that has to do with some of the backlash that Poppy has gotten. Some of the backlash that has actually gone against Ronnie Radke for what he said from Falling in Reverse in regards to Poppy not playing at the Upheaval Festival, which was in Michigan. And that was due to the smoke from the Canadian wildfires. The entire Midwest and out northeast has just been blanketed with smoke this past week or two. Millions of acres burning up in Canada. That's blown down south with the smoke. That's caused air quality of unhealthy or super unhealthy, very unhealthy for groups up to 350 AQI. Actually, that's even considered hazardous. And the rest of Poppy's band, though, they did play the set as an instrumental with N95 masks and respirators on. This actually isn't even the first time that weather has affected a set for Poppy this year, as she only got to perform for about a minute before protocols were activated for lightning and extreme weather down in Florida. I believe that was for Welcome to Rockville, if I'm not mistaken. This did prompt, though, the lead singer of Falling in Reverse, Ronnie Radke, to say, quote, "I get it, but imagine if I did this on a rock feed post on Instagram in response to Poppy not playing the set." And there were some mixed responses. I think a lot of people obviously supporting Poppy's right to not play it, and this is something that just has to get stated. We don't know, her health conditions that she has. We don't need to know that. That's private. But what I will say is, in general, it sucks for any festival to have to cancel, postpone, make arrangements. I know Incarceration had to make some changes too due to some extreme weather with rain. But at the same time, it's better for you to make that decision instead of putting on the artist to make a tough decision on what they have to decide to do. And I feel like Poppy was kind of put in an impossible position where if she does it, then she risks her health and some potential really negative things happening to her on a longer term basis. But at the same time, if she doesn't play, she's going to get backlash from some people out there saying, "Why didn't you play when all these other acts played?" And I know that there will be some people out there that say, "Oh, Gojira performed and so did other bands," and that's great. But I can also say, as someone who lives in California, where in numerous recent years there have been some big fire seasons where the valley has been blanketed with smoke. I don't blame her a single bit. Even at one of my workplaces, that's a pretty big business nationwide, they shut down for nearly a week when we had an AQI of around 300 or higher. It's just not healthy. It's equivalent to smoking numerous cigarettes. And you shouldn't expect someone to risk their health out in those conditions, especially if you're a singer and you're using so much oxygen. So my take is, I think that it should be the responsibility of whoever is the organizer of the event to say, "Hey, we want to have the best, focus and care for our fans and our artists' health, and therefore we either have to move something or some sets aren't going to be able to get played." It's a lose-lose. I 100% understand that, but I just think that there's a responsibility that comes into account of knowing There might be times where there is extreme weather, and you have to be able to prepare for that. And so it's a tough thing for sure. It's unfortunate. One other thing I'll say about this, I'll also say I also saw dozens of articles regarding Poppy not performing, but also very few when it came to bands like the Black Keys or Creed postponing outdoor shows in Chicago and one in Minnesota. Now, I understand the difference with those is that they were postponed to different dates, and you really can't necessarily do that with a festival. But obviously, it still impacts fans changing dates around. Maybe some of those fans won't be able to attend the later show, and it's still disappointing, right? Because for fans, you plan for it for weeks or months in advance. But like I said, I think it's equally or more disappointing for the performer when something not under their control does affect their performance. Now, the last thing I'll say on this, I don't want to talk bad about anybody in particular or people on this podcast, because I want this to be a place for the metal community to come together and not divide over stupid crap. We already have enough of that daily in this world. But that being said, just to Ronnie, why did you feel the need to say what you said on Instagram? This isn't the first time either, that he's obviously wronged a female act. Spirit Box were supposed to go on tour with Falling in Reverse 3 years ago in 2023 for the Popular Monster Tour, a concert I actually went to go see with Ice Nine Kills, Catch Your Breath, and Under Oath. It was a great concert, but Spirit Box ultimately decided not to play, and it was at least speculated that it was due to some of his trans comments that he made online, some of the past allegations against him. Again, I'm not going to fully get into that. That's not my place, but I'll leave it just at this. And as the old saying goes, if you have nothing good to say, you probably shouldn't say anything at all. So I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, it was really interesting to just see the overall response and the amount of articles that were kind of talking about Poppy. Not necessarily critical per se, but just a lot was directed at her not playing at the festival. And again, like I said, she posted a public statement on her Instagram saying, I'm not performing out in 350 plus AQI, and I don't blame her one bit. I don't think anybody should. So I'll leave it at that. With that being said, let's go ahead now and transition into something that is fantastic news, great news. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland opening the Woman in Metal You Will Know My Name exhibit. This is just something that's incredible. I think that this is long overdue. So let me go ahead and talk about this article here from IdeaStream Public Media. Once I talk about the article, I will also share my screen so you guys can see some photos that accompany it that are a part of the exhibit. And then I actually have a video that I'll be playing from Woman in Rock on Facebook that is Lizzie Hale's speech about the opening. So let's go ahead and get into this. If this is an article, by the way, it's written from Lucas Yang. If you follow the winding path of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's main exhibit hall to the end, past the massive faces of Elvis and Jimi Hendrix through an altar to the Beatles, you'll find, tucked just in front of the exit and thrumming with the sheer volume of ambient music, an ode to the woman of metal. Woman in Metal, You Will Know My Name, just opened this month. This was a quote from the Rock Hall assistant curator, Haley Cronin. I've always been a fan of metal music. There's such a feeling of community and being at home with everyone wonderful and weird. That embrace of eccentricity, however, can be a double-edged sword for women in metal. In a male-dominated space, female metal musicians have often been tokenized or viewed as novelty acts. Cronin mentioned, why do we have to put the label female in front of a band when we don't put that same label for men? People don't think that women can embody these heavier themes or this darkness. Kind of gets back to the topic we talked about week one of female fronted being, a word or adjective that's used to describe a lot of bands, being a little bit lazy. And I mentioned I agreed about that. Continuing with this article, though, Woman in Metal is divided into 3 distinct periods. The Risk Takers, 1969 to 1995. It begins with an electric guitar from Lita Ford, who got her start in the all-female rock band The Runaways before breaking out as a solo glam metal act in the 1980s. As Cronin said, the Queen of Metal in America. On the European side, a metal-studded ensemble from German singer Doro Pesch features black leather adorned with applique and frills. Between fronting heavy metal band Warlock and a string of successful solo albums, Pesh has been a fixture of the scene for more than 40 years. As Cronin said, Ford and Pesh really led the charge for the first woman ever in the genre. Uh, Slightly disagree with that. I mean, with metal, yes. I do think though that there are other singers you can go all the way back to the 50s with this. I think you could, mention when it comes to rock and just, being a bit more of just a stronger voice. You can mention Janis Joplin. You can mention a lot of different female musicians in there from the 50s and 60s too. But continuing with this. One example of how a woman had to break barriers in the industry is encapsulated by Roxy Petrucci's drumsticks. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Petrucci co-founded all-female glam metal band Vixen, who released their debut album in 1988 and eventually sold more than 1 million records. As Petrucci said in a 2024 documentary, "I wanted to play so hard that my hands would bleed, and they did." You can also see a copy of Hellions' Screams in the Night album, released independently under a record label founded by frontwoman Anne Boleyn. As Cronin mentioned, upon doing that and getting more into that side of the industry, Boleyn realized the inconsistencies of women in the industry getting terrible deals, being treated horribly. Boleyn went on to get a law degree at the University of Laverne in 2007. As an attorney, she represents women in employment cases, particularly those involving sexual harassment and intimidation. The Changemaker section from 1995 to 2015 opens up the crack door, including the rise of one of Cronin's personal heroes, Lizzie Hale, co-founder and lead singer of Halestorm. Active since 1997, the band has released a platinum-selling album and performed to sold-out arenas. What draws Cronin in, though, is Hale's writing. Songs like Freak Like Me for Cronin push for gender and LGBTQ equality, with lyrics expressing vulnerability and radical acceptance. Hale echoed the sentiment during her set at the exhibit's July 10th opening reception. I'll get into Hale's Lizzie's speech here in a second, so I won't mention that quote. The bravery is displayed firsthand in Woman in Metal with handwritten lyric drafts for Halestorm songs Broken Doll and Darkness Always Wins. As Cronin said, you get to see every artistic moment of writing a song, the mess-ups, the flubs, when they finally figure out the right verse, the right phrasing. While earlier women may have looked to male forerunners, Lita Ford, for instance, picked up certain guitar techniques from Jimi Hendrix, the final Stormbreaker section, 2015 to present, captures the diversity of ways women have entered and played with metal songwriting. Current artists often pivot from other genres or intermingle. Industrial metal singer Poppy was once a viral YouTube star who dabbled in electro-pop and reggae, while Courtney LaPlante of Spiritbox joined Megan Thee Stallion in 2024 for rap metal track TYG. The exhibit centerpiece is a triptych of white gowns, statuesque layers of torn singed gossamer fabric worn by The Warning at the Latin Grammy Awards, a trio of hard rock playing sisters from Mexico. Some metal fans, as Cronin said, some metal fans are probably like, "Oh, you're tainted now because you've touched this genre or that genre." Women in metal are the ones that are kind of leading the charge of moving away from thinking like that. There are a lot of subgenres, obviously, when it comes to metal. It mentioned a lot of them in the past. Obviously, there's metalcore, deathcore, alt metal, new metal, plenty of different genres out there, as I'm sure anybody tuning into this podcast knows. The industry's response has been both substantial and gradual. Hale became the first female winner of Best Hard Rock Metal Performance Grammy in 2012 with Halestorm when the categories were briefly combined, and nearly a decade later, Poppy became the first solo act nominated for Best Metal Performance in 2021. As Cronin said, that's a very clear tell of how the landscape has changed from the beginning of Lita Ford and Doro Pesch, first risking their careers to do metal just on a wing and a prayer, and again, we still have a ways to go. But the overall curatorial approach is to keep it light. As Cronin mentioned, we don't want to harp on these stories to so much as this institution because we're here to more celebrate, even though that is such a big part of the story. Behind it all, the beating heart of the exhibit is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's reverent, never wash my signed face groupie attitude. Cronin gushed most about a flamethrower megaphone from Militia Vox, chatting with the pretty reckless frontwoman Taylor Momsen, and being gifted a shirt from Ash Costello of New Year's Day. As Cronin said, "I'm so proud that I finally get to put a spotlight on these ladies that have been lost and kind of forgotten in the industry for so long." So this is, just great. I think, this opening is just a super cool thing. There's a few photos here, so I'll go ahead and share my screen so you guys can take a look at that. All right, so as you can see here, here are some pictures from that article. So here is some clothing worn on stage and screen by Ash Costello, Dorothy Martin, and Alyssa White Gluz. It's featured in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's newest exhibit right here. As we scroll down, you can also see Nita Strauss receiving an honorary Super Bowl ring after the Rams' 2022 victory for her efforts. Again, I know she's performed pregame for the Rams before. I forget if it was also at the Super Bowl. I feel like it was at least in the playoffs, but regardless, this is pretty darn cool right here. And then when we scroll down, we have a few other pictures here. So these are the dresses and gowns worn by the Warning right here from 2024. As we scroll, you can also see stuff from Poppy, Meg Mills, just really cool stuff here. And then we go to the next one, and you have something that was worn by Courtney LaPlante right here at Coachella in 2025. So that's just a few things, but there's plenty more at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So really cool stuff, and I'm glad that it's open. And yeah, I definitely. I'm planning on making a trip to Cleveland, hopefully within the next year or so, and making it a point to go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and checking that out. So, what are your thoughts on the exhibit? Do you have plans of going anytime soon? And if so, what are you most excited to see? Here is the video of Lzzy Hale at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame opening the new exhibit. Beautiful speech here. Let's go ahead and play it for y'all.
Standing here tonight is one of the strangest, most humbling, and most beautiful moments of my life, because when I was a little girl, growing up in farmland, Pennsylvania, in the middle of nowhere, I could have never dreamed of being in a museum. But I dreamt about being loud. I dreamt about being in a band with my best friends, standing on a stage, shaking the walls, and shaking a few expectations loose while I was at it. I grew up loving rock and metal because those genres never asked permission. They were rebellious, fearless, emotional, and unapologetic. They made room for anger, joy, heartbreak, power, vulnerability, and everything in between. What I didn't always see was someone who looks like me. But there were women. There were always women. Women who carved out their own path. Women who climbed through windows when the doors wouldn't open. Women who were told they were too loud, too aggressive, too emotional, too ambitious, too feminine, too masculine, too much of something, or not enough of something else. And every single time someone assumed she was just the girlfriend or the merch girl. Every time the radio said that they wouldn't play her songs because they already had their token female artist. Every time a record label turned her down because women in metal were not on trend at the moment. She cranked up the music, and she did it anyway. With blood in her teeth and dirt under her nails, she held the gate open for the women fighting behind her. Tonight, we celebrate these women, not as exceptions, not as novelties, but as musicians, not female musicians, just musicians, as artists, as architects of this music we love and have given our lives to. So thank you so much to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for preserving these stories. Thank you to the fans who have carried this music across generations. And thank you to every woman in metal, past, present, and future. This exhibit isn't about how far we've come. It's about how much farther we're going. The amplifiers are still ringing, the lights are up, and you will know our names. Thank you so much.
What a fantastic ambassador that she is just for metal as well. Gotta love Lzzy Hale. A super inspiring speech right there. And again, I'm really looking forward at some point in the future to checking out this exhibit. I think it's great that it's an addition to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So great stuff there. Let's go ahead now and transition on. Before we get into our album of the week, I want to get into another thing talking about specifics for what a festival could look like with Valkyrie Fest. Last week, we talked about location. This week, let's talk about what I think the realistic expectations are. Firstly, I want to look at just other major rock and metal festivals and their average daily attendance from for their first day, going back to their first year of existence. So Louder Than Life, they averaged 18,400 per day in 2014. Of course, that's out in Louisville. Rock Oklahoma, 33,300 per day in 2007. Incarceration, 6,000 per day in 2018. Sonic Temple, 40,000 per day in 2019, but that also launched at the same venue as Rock on the Range, which Rock on the Range began in 2007 in Columbus, and that averaged 30,000 per day in 07. The Upheaval Festival in Grand Rapids, 10 to 12,000 per day in 2021. Look at Knot Fest in 2012, that averaged about 15 to 20,000 per day. Welcome to Rockville, about 10,000 in 2011 in Jacksonville, Florida. Aftershock, 13,000 in 2012 in Sacramento. I believe Rockville and Aftershock both started as one-day festivals in 2011 and 2012. And then if you look overseas, Hellfest, which started in 2006 in France, got about 7,300 per day. And then Rock am Ring in Germany, which started all the way back in 1985, about 37,500 per day. Some of these I look at on the basis of pure demand, location, and of course lineups. When Rock on the Range started in 2007, most festivals in the U.S. were built around indie, pop, and alternative music. Rock metal was kind of a bit of a starving fan base. Rock Oklahoma was the same year, but that was a little bit more niche. It was more around 80s metal, hair metal with Poison, Queensryche, Twisted Sister, Vince Neil, etc. So in a way, you could say these were, at the time, they were niche. Other rock and metal festivals, well, incredible. When they started, they might have not had quite as much of a niche since they've opened since '07, other than being in places of the country that there haven't been those festivals before. And of course, they've grown over time, and they're all incredible. But talking about Valkyrie Fest and having an all woman rock and metal festival, I'm not saying that I think that this festival is immediately going to do 30,000 per day. In fact, going off of locations that I spoke about last week, issues could actually potentially arise with certain spots if it's over 25,000 right away. But I do believe 15,000 is certainly a possibility, with as high as 20K per day if marketed properly. Just to make this clear, I'm not just throwing out a number. This isn't a prediction. It's the range I'd hope to achieve if everything went right. Obviously, one of those major things that has to go right is pricing things appropriately. That's a big part, is making a price that's fair for metal fans, while also ensuring, there's enough to pay off everything at the festival, from artists to vendors, productions, including, stagehands, lights, etc., fencing and barricades, toilets, water, security and staffing, insurance, medical, permits, licensing, infrastructure like power and generators, artist hospitality, marketing, transportation, shuttles, etc. Most festivals that are 3+ days charge anywhere from $300 to $500 for general admission. VIPs usually at least $650. Since this festival would start out at 2 days, at least that's my goal, here's at least my thought. 2-day general admission, $279, VIP, $429. I don't really like the idea. I know some festivals do pricing tiers if you buy earlier or later. I don't want to handicap someone by purchasing before they know the lineup, or feeling like they need to be pressured to purchase right away. If they buy it a month out, great. I don't think that there needs to be the pressure with pricing tiers, at least immediately the first year. I'd also like the option for camping to be on site as well, because if it's at a good site, as I mentioned last week, where there's a lot of other major cities that are within a day of travel, you're going to get some people that are going to want to drive out, for it, and are, not going to want to pay buku dollars for a hotel. Some people that might, take an RV or a camper out there. So I think camping's a great option. I would like there to be a place that has that. I would probably do $100 to $125 for a 2-day camping pass. So that's my thought there. Another factor you have to think in when it comes to the potential success with the number of attendees and also the price is, what are the dates going to be? So this is something that's kind of interesting to me because you have to factor in weather and when the other festivals are going on. Obviously, a lot of festivals are in the summer and fall. For example, Rockville's usually, I think, the first or second weekend in May. Sonic Temple's a little later in May. I think it's last weekend of May. Incarceration, which just happened this past week, July 17th to the 19th. Upheaval, July 17th, 18th. Rocklahoma, which is, I believe, the first weekend in September. Louder Than Life, which is usually the second or third weekend in September. And then Aftershock, which is the first weekend in October. So initially, kind of just looking through all of these, my first thought was mid to late August. However, it can also be very hot and humid during that time of the year. Plus, kids are getting prepared or getting back into school. Regardless of whenever you choose it during the summertime, a lot of places it's going to be hot. It's a matter of trying to avoid precipitation and really bad weather. Some of that you're going to get in the Midwest regardless. Some of it you're going to get in the Northeast. Some of it you're going to get in the South. So it just really depends. Also location based off of that too. But what I actually looked back and I actually think is a really good time is there is no major festivals in June. So I'm thinking mid to late June, the 3rd to 4th weekend of June. It's summer for everyone, and it's just, for some people, it's just starting. It's a great way to kind of kick it off. The only other major festival going on in June that I know of in the country for any genre is Bonnaroo, which I mentioned last week. That's usually the second weekend of June. So, for example, just throwing a date out there, if this was a thing, June 18th to June 19th or June 25th to June 26th, 2027, for example. So that's kind of my thought of dates, prices, what I think, attendee goals could be. But obviously, I want to get your guys' take of this too. I'm helping build it. I want to help build this eventually, but I also want this to be something that can be built together, as I've mentioned before. So, what are your thoughts on those prices and dates? Please let me know in the comments below if those are prices you feel that are fair that you would pay. I really intrigued to hear your guys' takes on that. So that's my thought there. And with all of that being said, I think that's going to lead perfectly into our album review for the week. So this week we're going to talk about this is probably the smallest band I think that we've covered so far. The Pretty Wild are growing pretty rapidly. They're still relatively small, but this band is also very small, and as I'll get into, I think that they should be a lot more popular, and they're very underrated. And this is a band called Eva Under Fire. This is an alt metal band that's been around since 2015. They're currently signed by the Better Noise music label out of Detroit, Michigan. I originally heard this band back in 2024 when they played at Aftershock early in the day, and immediately I was a fan. I listened to Blow, Coming for Blood, their version of Separate Ways, and then plenty of other songs off of Love, Drugs, and Misery that came out in 2022. They have just shy of 500,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, numerous songs with millions of plays. The band is fronted by Amanda Leiberg, Rob Leiberg on lead guitar, Chris Slapnick on rhythm guitar, Ed Golick on bass, and Dave Miller II on drums. Amanda, this is incredible. She's also a therapist. In fact, she's actually a psychotherapist with Backline, which covers mental health resources for music industry artists facing depression and other issues. I also believe that she's a clinical psychologist outside of that back home in Michigan too. And I also learned actually just earlier today, it's funny, I've shouted out she's with the band before, and Tori Kravitz, what she does over there, fantastic job. It just so happened that she had her on the podcast, and I'm talking about the album on this podcast this week. But I watched a short from She's with the Band earlier today, and Amanda and Eva Under Fire actually teamed up with to write Love on Her Arms for Villainous, a song, the album, but the lead track of the album, to raise awareness and funds for mental health. And that's, fantastic. And to write Love on Our Arms, a great organization out there. They're usually out at least Aftershock. I'm not sure about the other festivals too, but they do great things. So in general, though, from what I've heard from this band, Eva Under Fire, I very much liked it. So without further ado, let's get into this thing. Villainous. We start off with the opening track, which is Awakening. And I love the guitars on this right away. The riffs really make this feel like an explosive start to the album. And I've always really enjoyed Amanda's voice. It's super powerful. She's dynamic. She's got a mix of solid cleans, but she can really also belt out verses, belt out a chorus, and you can really just sense the emotion whenever she's singing. This just screams overcoming past negativity and trauma, kind of being a new and improved person ready to take on the world. Two key parts to the song. I told the dark that I had survived. Demons couldn't take me. I am awakening. And then with air in my lungs, I scream to the sky. I'm alive and breathing. Heart is steady beating. Great opening song here. Great opening track. Kind of sets the course going forward for the album. And that takes us, to My Own Name. If Awakening wasn't an anthem, then this certainly is. It starts out kind of light with the I know my own name, and then after that, it just picks up with the heavy riffs, and then the chorus on this is magnificent as well. I mentioned she can belt out verses, and the I'm Not Dead Yet is a perfect example at the breakdown. They definitely show you don't need screams per se to be a kick-ass metal band, but she's more than capable of doing that at times. She's badass. I love Amanda. This song just screams, I know who I am, and nobody can take that away from me. Essentially, I'm standing up for myself and what I believe in, not caring what other people think about you, and just doing you. Also, we've heard some heavy bass in these first couple tracks so far, but the drums on this absolutely kick ass too. So just really solid instrumentally, and a really great start to the album. From there, we continue on. We got Survive My Scars. And I'll start by saying that, I just love how Amanda is able, with the background as a therapist, to be able to put past pain away and not solely focus on that or the negatives that she has gone through or dealt with, and instead kind of ball it all up and talk about her transformation and inner strength coming out of it. Definitely a major motivation for others, and can certainly help people. Therapeutic is the perfect word for that. And that's the case here too. Part of the song, Leave My World in Pieces, I'm Still Bleeding, It's Tearing Me Apart, But I'll Survive My Scars, just screams pure resilience. I love that it also slows down a bit after the second chorus, and we get some secrets aren't worth keeping, stories ain't worth repeating. And what I get from that is that, she's not afraid to speak about her past or her vulnerability, because the way she's doing it could be motivational or helpful for others. So really good here, and just, kind of continues the resiliency theme of trying to find self-worth to start this album. From there, we go to the title track, Villainous. This features Maria Brink of In This Moment. Always great to hear Maria's voice, and I know that In This Moment we'll be having an album coming out in just over a month. We'll be covering that here when that comes out. Two great albums coming out on the same day, August 28th, Witch, and then the new album from The Warning, which I'm blanking right now at the moment. Sorry, having a brain fart. Anywho, getting back to this song, each song, because of its meaning so far in this album, but also instrumentally, gives anthem-like vibes. I think that's great. Really good energy so far. We haven't stopped. A big part of this song, careful what you create, because I am not the same. So go ahead and hate me. What's done is done. I've become villainous. Essentially, I'm not the same person. You've created a monster, likely from abuse. And because I'm strong, you now hate me. But screw it. I'm proud of who I now am. It just, again, super, super empowering here. So we continue that with another great track. And we proceed on to The Words You Say. This is kind of just screaming, struggling with a toxic relationship. Part of this song, you only tell me that I'm beautiful right before I fall apart. This is part of the chorus. I'm going to hate myself for loving you every time you break my heart. Very melodic, especially during the choruses. Another good track here on the album. From there, we go to Don't Say I'm Okay. Again, I just can't stop saying how beautiful Amanda's voice is when she belts out these choruses. Definitely just a super underrated, powerful, clean voice in metal. And it's funny because as I wrote that, we got to the bridge and we get an incredible scream from her here with "I Let You Lie" all the way until you've taken it all away from me. We kind of talked about this theme last week with the Pretty Wild's Zero Point Genesis album, but what I'm getting here is just trying to look good to the rest of society, putting on a fake face when in reality, what's under that mask is a lot darker than what appears. And it's clear here that she's struggling. Part of the song, I would recreate the Golden Gates to never have to say goodbye. And I kind of just wondered if this is about, someone close to her that's passed. I suppose it could also be about leaving a long relationship potentially as well. And judging by that part where she screams, it definitely could be a relationship. Now, that being said, I kind of could go either way still when we get to Hello Hollow, because everything's kind of ran together with this album. And Hello Hollow is this song just screams grief and just kind of dealing with grief. So it could be the former thing I mentioned about someone close to her that's passed. And so I was kind of curious when, listening to this song, who in her life who's been close to her has passed away. I didn't even know this. I looked up and saw her father passed away in 2018, absolutely heartbreaking, from a fentanyl overdose. Her mom barely survived it as well, and it actually played a major factor in her becoming a therapist, and obviously some songs that she's done with the band. I read that and it was heartbreaking. I'm so sorry for her and the rest of her family. I know I say this all the time, but I'm just glad that she has found a way to find something meaningful out of that tragedy. I mentioned it, in relation to Jill and Jules Wild, mother passing away last week, and how that's kind of played a role with their music. With this song Hello Hollow, when Amanda gets lower during the chorus, saying Hello Hollow, you can really kind of just sense that sadness. I love the rhythm and the bass guitars here a ton. They both just create so much energy. It's as if it's, building tension up to the chorus, and then the energy again just continues. We also get a quick violin here at the end of the song too, which is certainly a welcome addition. So a really good track here in the middle part of the album. That carries us over to Dark Soul. Admittedly, this is not one of my favorites on the album. Just not 100% really my cup of tea. Still solid though. Amanda gets really high here in the chorus with Dark when saying Dark Soul. The aggressive riffs and heavy bass continue on this track. The chorus here is definitely very catchy. Not as up tempo though as their other songs, and I think that's the big thing for me is I'm very big fan of up-tempo rock and metal, and we don't get that here, and it kind of just feels like it takes away from maybe a little bit of part of the album, but again, that's just my personal flavor and my take on that. It definitely slowed down a bit towards the end of the song. However, we go right back up tempo with Gasoline. Just a ton of energy, very upbeat here, and I absolutely love this song. You look at the first line of each verse in this song too. Every word, make it hurt, go ahead and try, and then scream at me, shoot to kill, give the third degree. Then the first two lines in the third verse, say your piece till you drop, no one's listening. May you choke as you speak, all the hate you preach. So this to me all kind of just screams judgment or bullying and how it can affect someone mentally, emotionally, and kind of cause them to blow up at themselves. Or throwing gasoline on an already burning fire, if you will, to make someone worse. Really good song here. From there, we proceed to a Murder Scene. And the bass of this one just sets a really dark, serious tone right away, where you can almost feel the tension. I kind of mentioned the tension building in an earlier song. You really get it here. It's intense. Part of this song, should have known better when the smiles turn to stares. I scream, but no one's there. It's not real. Shut it down. Take a pill. Again, we have themes of judgment from others and how it affects one mentally and how it can make them depressed to the point where some unfortunately commit self-harm or even attempt suicide. Very, very, very dark themes here for sure. From there, we continue to Safe Word. This is a little bit softer, kind of people trying to tear you down, themes of being manipulated. I love the guitars all album, and I like them here too. I will say again, just in general, this song wasn't really as much my cup of tea compared to some of the others on the album, but still solid here too. And then we get to the last two songs on the album, starting with Teeth. This had some really great melodies to it. I actually wonder if this is basically a song hitting back at the expectations of the beauty or the fashion industry. Couple pieces of this song. Say what you want, because this beauty is a beast. Smile at the cameras just so you can see my teeth. I've got a craving for blood and vanity. Vanity being a big word there, because obviously Vanity Magazine relating to some of that too. Obviously, a lot of people who show off their body or in these industries are judged heavily by critics, and that can affect a lot of things in a negative way mentally with people, such as body dysmorphia. So this is, to me, at least what I believe this is about. Again, I don't admit to have all the answers, but if it's what I believe it's about, really good, fantastic social commentary here. Speaking of what I believe is social commentary, and I could very well be wrong on this last song, but again, everything's kind of built up a little bit, and I'll get into that in a second. We go to A Violent End, and immediately, right away here in the beginning, we almost get like a metalcore thrash metal start to the song in the first 10-15 seconds. It's different. I love it. But immediately after that, we get back in some traditional rhythm and riffs. Very forceful, in your face. Definitely kind of grabs your attention. This to me is almost, wishing the worst for someone who took advantage of someone vulnerable. A couple pieces of this song, I hope you pay for the sins of fame. And immediately I'm kind of thinking, is that people in power preying on others? And this is where my take at least is on it. I really wonder how deep this truly is. Are we getting political? Are we just talking about Hollywood here? Because I mean, if we are, you can even infer this is about Epstein to an extent. I'll hazard and say it is, because think about this album. We go from talking about themes of self-empowerment to dealing with toxicity and judgment, and then finish with social commentary, back to Teeth in the last song, and then now this. Basically now, I get the sense she's a confident who she is as a person after dealing with the darkness she's dealt with in her life. She's now trying to help others get out of it, and one way to do that is to focus on certain industries or things happening in society. It all ties really well together. It flows perfectly if that's what they're going for, and if it is what they're going for, this is just masterful. My overall thoughts on the album: fantastic. In a big way, it's therapeutic. There isn't necessarily a lot of deviation between certain songs, and musically, outside of a couple that are a little bit lighter in a way, if you will, not quite as heavy riff wise. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because their strength is Amanda's powerful vocals mixed with solid heavy riffs. And again, as I just stated, everything just flows together perfectly, even with the meaning behind the whole album. I really went back and forth on this and kind of was like, is this better than the Pretty Wild 0 Point Genesis last week? And I actually decided it is. I think it just edges it out. This is just such a good album. I'm going to go 8.5 out of 10. This is just a very underrated, I'm not going to say underappreciated, because it's not, I don't think it's a matter of like people hear them and like don't appreciate them. I just think a lot of people might not know who they are. But they're a very underrated band. Amanda's a very underrated singer in this space, and more people need to check them out for sure. This is great stuff. Highly recommend this album. Go check it out. Villainous on YouTube Music, Spotify. They need more eyeballs and more ears on them for sure. This is just a great band. So that's my take on that. With that being said, let's go ahead and close this out with our band of the week this week. So band of the week this week is Nova Twins out of London, England. First thing I just got to say is, man, there's been some great music throughout history, especially recently, that's come out of the UK. This band started in 2014. It's a rock duo consisting of Amy Love on lead vocals and guitar, and Georgia South on bass and vocals. For live shows, they are supported by session drummer Jake Woodward. They have 80.7 thousand monthly listeners on YouTube Music, 1 million on Spotify, probably the biggest difference between those two that we've seen yet. 3 albums currently out from them, including Who Are the Girls, which released first in 2020, Supernova in 2022, and then Parasites and Butterflies last year in 2025. They are currently out on tour with Evanescence and Spirit Box. I'm actually recording this on the day that I wish I could go to a concert, but unfortunately, I'm not going to that, and I don't necessarily have the financial capability of doing that right now. But they definitely incorporate some rap, hip hops, and some synthesizers in their music. Their sound is also a mix of punk too. Some of their stuff is a little bit outside of actually what my musical likes and preferences are, but I can't deny that they're super unique and talented. Their most popular song is One by One with Bring Me the Horizon, and then Antagonist, which is just them. Their most underrated song, in my opinion, A Dark Place for Someone, Somewhere Beautiful. So that's the band of the week this week, Nova Twins. And with that being said, I think that is going to close out a very jam-packed show. I know we've gone over a lot this week. First thing before we really close this out, just thoughts go out again to all of the family, friends, fans of Jennifer Finch of L7, and never obviously want to have to report on that or talk about that, but at the same time we do want to honor their contributions of what they've done to music, and obviously affected people's lives in a positive way. So had to cover that. Next week on the show, we will get into another album review. We'll be talking about more stuff when it comes to woman in rock and metal. Actually, I'm going to have something where I'll have some responses from some artists that I've reached out to on Instagram. So definitely keep that in mind. And then we'll have some more stuff out there on the Instagram for you. So go follow at Valkyrie Fest on Instagram. Check out the podcast if you like it here, but you can't always tune into the video version. You can go over to Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can listen to the audio version of the podcast while you're on your way to work, while you're taking a drive, while you're just hanging out and chilling if you ever want to. So definitely we appreciate everyone who's tuned in. We have some new subscribers as well and appreciate that. Keep sharing this out if you get a chance. Really would appreciate that. And again, if you have any thoughts on anything that we talked about today, from the dates and prices of what Valkyrie Fest could be, to the album of Villainous from Eva Under Fire, to what we talked about with Poppy, or anything else in general, please let me know in the comments below or shoot me a DM on Instagram, and I'd love to chat about it more. Until next week, this has been Aaron Jackson with Valkyrie Sessions signing off. I hope everyone, first off, stay safe out there from the weather. Don't breathe in smoke. Breathe in clean air, and keep rocking out there, and we will see you next week. Until then, peace out.